Hey everybody, welcome back to Parenting for a Peaceful Home. I'm Christina Louise and I'm so excited to introduce you, if you haven't met her already through her TED Talk, Janine Staples, who is a professor and an educational anthropologist and a supreme love coach. And today we're going to talk about helping you to become supreme love so that it overflows into all of your relationships. Yes, your parenting relationships, yes, your love life, but even in your career, your body, and your health as well. Welcome, Janine. Thank you so much for being with us today. It's such an honor and a pleasure.
Christina, thank you so much for having me. It is a pleasure for me to be here today.
I am so excited to talk to you about what is supreme love.
Yeah. So supreme love is my answer to the self-love movement and the self-care movement. There are so many of us who are tuned into self-help as a genre, and we sort of gravitate to communities and networks and gurus and teachers who help us to sort of know ourselves better. And feel more confident and clear about our purpose, about our sense of identity, about authenticity. What I found when I went through my emotional breakdown, my mental breakdown, when I hit a crashing floor, was that the self-love movement was not helping me. If anyone is out there, if you've ever said a bunch of positive affirmations and they didn't work, then you probably have a resonance with maybe what I'm talking about. And supreme love is a response to that sort of inadequacy of self-love, to the extent that supreme love is about understanding yourself as a spirit who stewards a soul and lives in a soma. And if you have an orientation of understanding yourself and your identity that way, a spirit is limitless, ageless, timeless, boundless. And when you're stewarding a soul, that's your cognitive space. That's where you're doing your thought processing. It's where you're doing your meaning making. It's where you're doing labeling and categorizing. If you as a spirit are stewarding that energy in yourself and you are mastering it, you're doing governance and you're living inside of your soma, it opens up a brand new way of infinite thinking. It's sort of that quantum level leaping into consciousness. And self-love doesn't do that level of depth. So supreme love is about understanding yourself spiritually, emotionally, soulfully, somatically, sort of the entire identity that you can have as a being. And self-love, which is a great core concept, if self-love doesn't have that sort of deeper sense of identity, it can become a little bit superficial and not necessarily do the work we want it to do in the world or in ourselves, which is to help us to know ourselves better and to actualize our power really dynamically. So supreme love is about going deeper.
I love that. And what is a soma for those of us that don't know?
So I talk about spirit, soul, and soma. So I say that our identity is spirit. We are spirits. We're actually life forces in and of ourselves. Your soul is your cognitive space, and your soma is your body. So the soma is the material, concrete space. The soul is the cognitive space, and the spirit is ethereal.
Where does the mind come into that?
That's soul.
Okay.
Yeah. That's
and
soul.
Where does ego come into that?
Soul.
Okay.
The soul is really, really a huge part of our sense of trilogy. It's definitely where the ego is centered. That's our cognitive space. It's our space for thinking. It's our space for conceptualizing. It's where we hold meaning-making processes. It's where we do judgments. That's the soul. That's where our ego is. And so when I talk about supreme love and developing a supreme lover identity, I talk about understanding that we can command that space in our personhood, that we don't have to let it run amok, that we don't have to be slaves to our past ways of thinking, that we don't have to sort of acquiesce and say, oh, well, this is who I am. When you understand that you are a spirit and you are in and of yourself a quantum force, and you were given this soul, this personality, this way of thinking. You've inherited lots of historical processing from your parents and your grandparents, and yet you're not a victim to your soul. Your soul belongs to you, spirit. Your soul belongs to you. You can train your soul however you please. You can heal your soul however you choose. Your soul belongs to you. It doesn't belong to anyone else. It doesn't belong to your ex-partner. It doesn't belong to your current partner. It doesn't belong to your parents. Your soul doesn't belong to your children or your grandchildren. Your soul is yours to do with as you will.
Mm-hmm. Now I can see this kind of this is a profound idea and I'm totally resonating with it, but I can see for so many moms maybe when we say it doesn't belong to anybody else. There's this guilt and this shame.
Yeah.
Yeah, let's talk about that.
Yeah. So for women in general, we've inherited a pretty sizable cosmic pain body. It's the female pain body, and Deepak Chopra talks about the pain body. There is a feminine pain body, which means we have intergenerational inheritance that links us to women not only in our own family, but women all over the world. And there's lots of guilt and shame that comes into effect sort of genetically, epigenetically, culturally, socially. We're built up into feeling ashamed, to feeling guilt somehow. So I like to talk to women about like the background of guilt and shame that we sort of inherit. But then in your immediate life, as a conscious person who is doing parenting and partnering right now, in lots of ways that we do it. You could be adopting, you could be parenting birth children, you could be grandparenting, you could be connected to nieces and nephews, you could be an educator. There's lots of ways that parenting gets done, and there's lots of ways that partnering gets done. Whatever happens in all of those myriad ways, if you're a woman, probably someone has told you that you're not doing it right, that you're not doing it well, that you're not good enough. And it might be another mom who has said that to you. It might be another wife or girlfriend. It might be a mother-in-law or a grandmother-in-law.
Or just even a TV show. I mean, it's really everywhere in culture.
The media. It's the way that we're socialized into guilt and shame has a far-reaching effect. It's a spider web.
It really is.
It's just a multiple faceted web of just tentacles that creep in to your soul, the part of you that belongs to you, that creates meaning. And we have all kinds of belief systems spinning in our soul about not being good enough, about not doing it right, not doing it well enough, not being perfect, being at fault for our children's lives not turning out the way we wanted them to turn out, or our parents not being satisfied with our caregiving, or our siblings judging us for our investment in caregiving or not. You know, there's all kinds of ways that we are socialized into feeling guilty and ashamed of ourselves as women. And what I talk about in the Supreme Love Project is waking up to consciousness to how we've been duped and how we are seduced into this guilt. There's also this whole culture, Christina, around priding yourself on how guilty you feel. You know, like, oh, I definitely have it worse than you, or I definitely feel more guilty than you, or oh, I definitely have a bigger project with my kid than you.
Right.
And instead,
or I screwed up bigger than you.
Right.
Yeah.
So instead of, and then what self-love would have us do in those moments is say, well, I can just sort of point out the things that I do well to sort of talk myself out of that guilt, or talk myself out of that shame, or I can cheerlead for myself, you know, and give myself lots of self-love, and, you know, maybe write a journal entry that lists all the things that, you know, I'm good at. That's self-love. Or self-care is going to get a mani-pedi, or to take a day off to go and get a massage, or have a lunch with the girls. And self-love and self-care practices do a certain amount of work, but what I teach in the Supreme Love Project is they're really only meant to be finishers. They finish off your healing. But if you want to actually initiate deep healing, you've got to do an excavation of your soul. Your soul, which holds all that memory, all that meaning, your soma, your body, which stores that memory, genetically in your skin. So what I would say to the moms out there, for example, how many of you have felt that pang of guilt in your belly when you think your kid has gone without or hasn't gotten some material thing that you think they deserve or want or need? And how many of you had heart palpitations just imagining the judgment of the teacher who thinks that you're not showing up enough or helping with homework enough? Or how many of you stayed up nights and you felt that tension in your shoulders because you're thinking about your current or ex-partner and how they're shaming you and saying that you haven't been beautiful enough, sexy enough, competent enough, attentive enough. Maybe you haven't noticed enough about your child. Your body is reacting to those meanings that you're making, and you're storing memory, that somatic memory. And what I say as Supreme Lover is that the self-love and the self-care practices that we want to do are not going to have a long-term effect unless they are preceded by a deep excavation of the soul. That is doing supreme love. That is going deep into your belief systems, your mindsets, your vantage points, your perspectives, your narrative structures. How do you talk to yourself? How do you speak to yourself? Where do those beliefs come from? Really uncovering them and bringing them up to be healed. Those wounded parts of you, those disowned parts of you that are hidden from the world, or you think they're hidden, that you reject, that you feel humiliated by, that you feel ashamed of. Those are the deepest parts of you as a mom, as a stepmom, as a godmom, as an auntie, as an educator, as a grandmother, that you got to dig down into your soul and your soma, lift them up to the surface. All those things you've been pressing down, ignoring with the extra glass of wine or the extra, shovel of food, or the girls' day out or the girls' night out, thinking that it'll cover up. You got to do the deep work. The Supreme Love Project is all about going deep, deep, deep into the scary parts of your soul and your soma, and giving you methods. A Supreme Love Healing methodology is what I've crafted in our community to provide you with a space to actually go down in there, into the recesses of your memory and your meaning-making space, and find out what it is that's terrifying you, that's horrifying you, the ways that guilt and shame have been etched in, and then healing it at the root, not at the leaves of the tree. We're not going to just do chopping and pruning at the leaves. We got to heal at the root. So the difference between self-love and supreme love is self-love is really great for beautification. It's great for pruning the leaves, but supreme love goes to the root and gets at the disease where it lives.
Yeah. And I totally resonate with that. I do that work in my own life. I'm so grateful to know that there's others out there that are doing that as well with the Supreme Love Project.
Yes.
I'm just going to take the position of the moms who haven't done this type of work yet, or who have just been burnt out with self-care, or maybe are still engaged in it and are feeling guilty because it's not working for them. Yeah. What I want to say to these moms right now is there's nothing wrong with you. She just eloquently, I hope that we go back and listen to that again. And I invite you to just forgive that guilt and shame over it's not working for me, but it seems to be working for everybody else. This is why it's not working for you. It's meant to beautify. We have to do some deeper work. So for those of us that are open to that now, it could sound a lot scary. It could sound a lot time consuming. It could sound like it's taking time away from my current partner or my child or my work. What would you say to a mom who might be thinking that right now?
Oh, well, what I would say is the Supreme Love Healing methodology, which I teach only in the Supreme Love course, so it's only for people who are enrolled in the course to work with me in a close partnership. The Supreme Love Healing methodology takes 45 minutes to an hour. It's once a week. That's it. So if you've got 45 minutes to an hour to spend in deep guided meditation, where I show you a quantum level healing that you can do, that's all the investment you need. And Mom, you're worth that investment.
Yeah.
Much more than that. And then any of the Supreme Love methods that correspond to the healing methodology, they're incremented in our community between 60 seconds and 2 minutes. You can actually incorporate daily methods that help you to understand ways to speak differently, methods that help you to visualize out in the world when you're going to the grocery store, when you are stopping by the auto mechanic, when you're picking your kids up from the library, if you're going to band camp, if you are going to sports after school. Supreme Love methods that happen after the healing methodology are implemented in 60 seconds. It's about understanding how to do what I call waking meditations. Waking meditations are the meditations you do with your eyes open while you're out running your errands, while you're cleaning your house and washing dishes, or while you're walking the dog. So the women and the men actually in the Supreme Love Project learn both the healing methodology, which is the sit down, quiet room, dark space guided meditation, where I teach you how to steward your soul intentionally and go do deep excavation of soul and soma, bring up those wounded parts, those fragmented parts that are holding your guilt and your shame, your lack of authenticity, your lack of voice, your wobbly identity, bring them up to the surface to engage with them meaningfully, very strategically in a patented process that I've developed, and then come out of that space for the rest of the week to practice the methods in 60-second increments. That's how you scaffold in a greater capacity and a greater space to actually like yourself for real, to know yourself for real, to respect and trust yourself sincerely, way beyond what self-love could teach you. A supreme lover identity is a person who knows herself from the inside out, not just the outside in. So the Supreme Love Healing methodology is about not just saying, oh, I noticed that I run a really beautiful household, like a tight ship. Or I noticed that my kids are turning out really well, so I'm patting myself on the back. That's great for self-love, and all that can be true. But anything that's material, that's outside of you, that won't go away from you, your kids will eventually go to school, or they'll move out, and they'll get their own partners and their own families. The house you're living in that you're running right now won't always be there, simply because those are all temporary things. The Supreme Love Healing methodology teaches you to identify with your value and worth from the inside out, as opposed to what self-love does, which helps you to identify your value from the outside in. So we have to work from the inside out. That's the proper order to generate a really strong, powerful, like unshakable, unwavering identity, which is what you want for yourself as a woman.
Absolutely. Is there something that you could share with us that maybe the moms could just try out to give this a little bit of a try with us right now?
Yeah. So it's interesting that you would think about that. So here's what I would say. Often the inverse of guilt and shame is judgment. So if we're carrying a lot of guilt and shame in our soma and in our soul, it translates as judgment, where, I don't know if a lot of the moms watching, do you know a lot of judgy moms? Moms who judge you for what you're wearing, or judge you for what you speak, how you speak, or judge you for your hairstyle or your hemline, or they judge you if you've gone to the PTA or if you're not in the PTA. There's a great method that I practice in the Supreme Love Project that helps to curb and cut down on judgment. And that's a fairly quick method. It takes about, like I said, most Supreme methods take about 60 seconds to implement. It's called a waking meditation. So here's what you can do. When you're out in the world, if you're at the grocery store, if you're taking your dog to the dog park, wherever you're going, what you can do is you can find a person. Just choose a person. You could be at a red light and choose the person in the car next to you. That's how versatile the methods are. And what you could do is practice I wonder statements. The minute you catch yourself judging a person, so the judgment is, ooh, look at her hair. Why would she go out of the house looking like that? But the judgment is, ooh, she's so heavy. Oh my gosh, she really needs Weight Watchers. Or, ooh, he's so loud and smelly. Why would he go run an errand looking like that? The minute you catch a judgment, you can practice doing I wonder statements. And I wonder statements go like this. I wonder what she had for breakfast. You slow yourself down. There's a process of breathing through this method, of coming into your body, relaxing your body as you do I wondering. I wonder if she has more children at home. I wonder if she went to college. I wonder if she got kicked out of middle school. I wonder if she ever played an instrument. I wonder if she's ever been to Africa. I wonder if she likes to do arts and crafts. It's I wonder, I wonder, I wonder. If you can practice I wonder statements about a person that you've been objectifying and judging as if they are an object of your disdain and your contempt, what ends up happening, Christina, and all the moms watching, is you contextualize that person and you make them a human being. You make them a real person in real time. You slow yourself down and you take that bite back, that bite of judgment back. You can only judge someone when you're not humanizing them. But I wonder statements create color, depth, warmth, texture, breadth, and height to the individual that you're beholding. They become real to you. And that helps to tenderize your soul in relation to them. It's a beautiful way to steward your soul responsibly. Because what I've learned is, as spirits, if we let our soul run amok in judgment and run amok in condemnation and run amok in criticism, we're not doing good governance as spirits, and we can do better. And it's easier than you think.
And if we're allowing ourselves to judge others, we're going to see that reflected back to us in our world. And so
it's all a circle.
If there's a mom out there watching who's like, why are these bees, looking at me and judging me, and she's doing this and she's doing that, maybe it's time to employ this really valuable tool that Janine just shared with us. Thank you so much for sharing that tool.
You're welcome. You're welcome.
And
so easy.
Go ahead.
And I was just going to say, I like what you said, Christina, about the cycle and the circle of energy. As a Supreme Lover, we learn about the circle of energy, that feminine receiving and masculine giving are a part of like our energetic yin and yang. And also the sort of like the seeding and the reaping is a part of the way that the energies of the world work. And so if we notice ourselves being judged, it's only for one of two reasons. Either we are judging others, or we are judging ourselves.
Right.
And the I wonder stance, that's a beautiful method that we practice in the Supreme Love Project, that can be used with yourself. When you start judging yourself, I can never do this right, or I always get this wrong, or we start really railing against ourselves and really shoring up more guilt and shame, we can say to ourselves really peaceably, like, I wonder if I could use a nap right now. Or I wonder if I've had enough water to drink today, or I wonder if I could use about 5 minutes of meditation, or I wonder if I'm really mad at someone that I haven't really dug into that. You can wonder about yourself to slow yourself down and detach from your own self-judgment. And so what you were just saying, and I wanted to reiterate that, if you're noticing lots of people like coming down on you really hard, like judging you for what you wear, or how you speak, or your hair, or your skin, or your body, or, your career choice, or whatever, start to think about how you're placing judgment to do guilt and shame work outside of yourself, or how you're doing it to yourself. And then turn it around with this method. Easy peasy.
I love it. You're right. It is easy peasy. And before we started recording today, you had made mention about how if guilt and shame is coming up in our love life or in our parenting relationships, it's really coming up everywhere in our life. And this idea that we really are at our core supreme lovers, but that it's just covered up. And I want to make sure that we cover that today for the moms who are watching. Would you speak into that for us too, please?
Yes, absolutely. The thing that we need to remember as women is that we have been cloaked. There's been a cloaking over our eyes and our sensibility, and it's time to unveil that, to lift that off, to like remove the scales from our eyes. If something is showing up in your life in one area, it's not isolated. That's actually not cosmic law. That's not the way that it works. So if you are feeling guilty and ashamed in your mothering, in your parenting, however you're doing your parenting, notice it in other places, look for it in other places so that you can start to get clear about the thread. If you can uncover the thread, you're closer to cure. If any of us try, to think only about how we feel guilty as a parent and not how we feel guilty as an employee, or how we feel guilty as a child, or how we feel guilty as a sibling, or how we feel guilty as like an entrepreneur, or how you feel guilty as even a dog owner or a pet parent. What ends up happening is the way that you think about doing work in that area is short-sighted, because you don't see the ways that it's showing up in other areas, and it is by and large showing up in other areas. And I can give myself as an example. One of the things that my coach just pointed out to me very recently, and I'm going to talk to my community about, is that I'm slow to move. Now, I wouldn't have noticed this except in business. So for example, if my coach asked me to do something, she says, Janine, if I ask you to do something, I can say by clockwork, it'll take you 48 hours to think about doing it, as opposed to just doing it. And I said, well, that's not such a big deal. And she says, look and see how delayed reactions, delayed responses are showing up in other areas of your life. So I looked at it in my dating life. I was like, oh, there it is. I looked at it in my family structure. I was like, oh, there it is. Oh, and I looked at it in my career as a professor. I was like, oh my God, there it is. This delayed thing. So if you're feeling guilty as a parent, if you're feeling ashamed of yourself as a parent, maybe you yell too much at your kids. You think you yell too much. Maybe you do corporal punishment and you feel really guilty and ashamed about that. There's guilt and shame showing up in other areas of your life. Check in to see if in your professional life you feel guilty about the way that you talk to your colleagues. Check in and see if you feel ashamed about the ways that you harbor resentments against your supervisors or the owner of the company. So that guilt and shame is showing up. If you feel guilt and shame in your parenting, if you feel it in your professional life, look at it in your family structure. What about your parents? What about your siblings? Where do you feel guilt and shame there? If you can trace it and find the thread, you'll get closer to cure. And so when you find how that sort of albatross, that weight shows up in multiple areas of your life, what happens is, Christina, you can create an aerial view and say, oh, I can see where I need healing in multiple areas. And as soon as I take care of the guilt and shame at my root, I can expect it to pop up and manifest in all of these relationships.
Yeah, that's the good news, right? That it's like, it's the bad news is if it's happening over here, it's happening everywhere. But the good news is if you can step back and look at where it's happening and own that and start to begin healing it at the root, it will systematically heal in every area of your life. It'll literally just start alleviating those symptoms. Is that what you're saying, right?
Absolutely.
And that's what I find.
One by one.
Yeah, and I find that in my work too. So absolutely. And then what is this? It's the guilt and the shame that are covering up our supreme lover, right?
Oh, absolutely. Oh, yeah.
So
along with our anger. I mean, we don't really necessarily have time to talk about rage and anger and the ways that women suppress our anger and our rage, which is a huge detriment. But for sure, the guilt and the shame, that it's almost like a calcification. It forms these layers over your soul. And your soul is where, like I said, you're doing your meaning making, you're processing, you're thinking things through, you're creating a mindset. And when we're feeling guilty and when we're feeling ashamed, what that does is it creates layer upon layer upon layer upon layer upon layer. And it suppresses our ability to operate from a feminine center. Because one of the reasons is we don't trust ourselves.
Right.
We don't trust our instinct. And also we don't have enough respect. The self-respect that we need as women comes from our understanding of how reverential we actually need to be in relation to our feminine center. That's the supreme lover identity. It's your feminine core. Supreme lover identity is actually Christ consciousness. It's about your access to limitlessness, agelessness, weightlessness, and incredible power. When you feel guilty and when you feel ashamed, it's distracting you and detracting you from that core. And you're right, Christina. What I do teach in the community is that we're all supreme lovers. We're born supreme lovers. We get coached out of our true identity by being here and by inheriting this intergenerational pain body. And the good news is that because at our core we are supreme lovers, our job is not to question that. Our job is not to suppress that. Our job is to uncover those layers, to learn how to unguilt, unshame, and practice that every day.
And that's what your free gift is about, right?
Yeah.
So let's talk about that.
Okay, so in my research, I worked with 10 women for 2 years, and that's a really small corpus, but to work with 10 people for 2 years is a lot. We worked together a lot, and what I found in my data with those women, and they were representative across the board, lots of different ways, professionally, personally, culturally, was that there were 5 toxic reactionary lover identities operating, and I gave them sort of funky names to help them to be memorable. I call them, the first lover identity is main chick. The second is side chick. The third is Bonnie. The fourth is bitch. And the fifth is victim. And each of those 5 lover identities are built. I mean, they are generated and they're built in relation to lots of abuses that we experience as women. Lots of shame, lots of guilt, lots of suppressed rage, suppressed anger, this attachment to at the idea of abandonment and separation. And so these sorts of ways of being a lover, and that's not only a romantic lover, of course, it's about being a lover in multiple ways, being a lover to your child, being a caregiver to your child, learning what love means in your relationship with your siblings, with colleagues, with friends, being in love relationships with yourself. And so these 5 toxic lover identities I found were really, really profound, very, very, very strong. And if not uncovered, we could be acting them out for the rest of our lives. So the quiz, the lover identity quiz, will be very helpful for you if you've experienced narcissistic abuse at all, with parents or with siblings, with past partners or current partners, or even with children, unfortunately, or if you've experienced any relational or social terror due to all kinds of things, fat shaming, racism, sexism, misogyny, ageism, where you have felt abandoned, rejected, condemned, criticized because you're a woman, and having to create an identity that lets you be in the world. So, for example, a woman who has built a lover identity of bitch is a fighter, and she's often argumentative. She's often contentious. She can be profane. She can be hard-hearted. She can seem like she's got an armor and a huge wall built up. And if that's the lover identity that you constructed and that you're operating you need to know it. And once you know it, there's ways to heal it.
Yeah. So the free gift is, the link is right below this video. And so we'll click the link. We'll go to your opt-in page. I'll enter in my name and email address. I'm going to find out my lover identity so I can start healing it. I might be the bitch. All right, well, we are at time, and I want to thank you so much for sharing your information. I know you have another call to get on, and I want to make sure that everybody has an opportunity to stay in touch with you and receive that free gift. So everybody watching, just go ahead and click the link below this video. Stay in touch with Janine, take that quiz, and feel free to email Janine or I and let us share your results. We'd be happy to talk with you about it. Janine, is there anything else that you want to say before we hop off?
I just want to say, if you do decide to take the lover identity quiz, you're going to be also going to be given opportunities to get in touch with more free resources to help you to start thinking about healing whatever lover identity that you're attached to or that you're constructing. So it's not a one-stop shop where you find out your lover identity and say, then what? Now what do I do? We're going to create some space for you to have more free resources so that you can get some responses to start healing that. And so I encourage everyone to take the lover identity quiz. Go ahead and check out my TED Talk, How to Die Peacefully, where I talk to you about what it means to die 1,000 deaths and to do it gracefully, so that you can actually live a more abundant life. And I look forward to seeing you in the Supreme Love Project. Find us on Facebook, and we'll offer you more free support there.
Awesome. Well, thank you again, and thank you everybody for watching. Take the quiz, click the link, don't put it off, grab it now, and I'll see you all again. Thanks for watching.
Hey, everybody. Bye-bye.